agenda, anyone prepared to move acceptance of the agenda?
Addition to consider?
Yep, oh yeah, seniors, it'll be an NOP. Elders,
Care policy?
okay.
What?
If we're adding and removing things to the agenda, I didn't know where to put the Maumee relationship agreement for the Trans Mountain.
So, for that, we should just, it's an agreement to be signed, so we should put it under new business.
Okay.
And then OPQ.
And the following agenda items that can be removed today is 6D, the FFA, because that's already been dealt with, along
Oh,
with
wait, which one?
6D. We've also, can remove B.
Oh, 6D, oh, oh yeah, that's awful.
Yeah, so I've stricken it on the agenda, but I'm just clarifying with council. Also 8B, the canoe journey update and policy decision, or discussion, sorry, because that will also fall under, the cultural events
Yeah.
proposals. And then the executive director posting update and decision, because we dealt with that at the last meeting.
Okay. Come on.
8H, we can remove that because we have it, and the committee members are, well, they were Sheila, Jay, Ed, Coral, Kristen, Sarah, Teresa, Marie, and Richard. And they've already met as a committee, correct? Coral? Last year, yeah, before the new, so, yeah, so Charlie, you and I haven't communicated, so.
Okay. Herbert?
8K, change on the river to update.
Update? Okay. Oh, good, meeting's getting shorter. Okay,
Jinx us
so,
now. Don't jinx us now.
yeah, well,
We got it. Force timeline.
oh, we got a timeline, we gotta finish at 2:30. Unless, we're able to leave a forum here, if we're not. Like we're just waiting up here. We'll see. Okay, mover, accept the agenda.
We have,
Someone
Moved by Cleason, seconded by John. Discussion. Motion carried. Okay, additions, we've done that. Declarations, anybody, any gifts above $50? No, conflicts of interest? No citizens' concerns to be raised? Nothing come in by correspondence or anything? The only thing I want to report is that we have asked one citizen to meet, we are meeting tomorrow morning. Yeah,
before 10.
yeah. Correspondence, there's quite a list here, I see, but we'll go through them really quickly. So, there was one, that an update on revenue sharing, I think that was pretty clear, straightforward. And then there was a letter from the Public Safety Canada. Regretfully, due to the very limited available funding, your request for additional officers was unfortunately not successful. I want us to refer that to, I guess it would be policy and to look at, should this be something that if that's the issue, can Hued come forward somehow and contribute to getting the additional officers, okay? So I just want to refer to the policy and to see if we can look at developing something
So, enforcement falls under tree implementation.
Okay. Okay, thank you, we'll refer to Mr. Counselor on that.
Sorry, just to add to that, I'm not sure to what extent Crystal is presenting, but she is asked to be on the Citizen Development Committee meeting to present enforcement.
Yeah, she's working on an enforcement framework for COVID, and that would be discussed at an enforcement tripartite meeting with federal and provincial representatives as well as all of the enforcement agencies. I think basic conservation will be there, but park for sure, RCMP for sure. I don't know when that's gonna happen, but it's being worked on, so I think she wants to meet with relevant committees before she puts it forward to council and pre-implementation.
Okay, the next one is that there was about 4 letters that came congratulating our council for being elected. What I'd like to do is formally respond to those letters. First, it's important we establish a good relationship, or in some cases maintain a good relationship. But some of the letters, in particular the AFN one, is spelling out some clear mandates that he's been assigned. So I'd like to call him to task on those and meet him. And thirdly, in some cases, we're going to need their support on some of the initiatives that we're carrying out. So it's on that basis that I'll move forward, and I'll keep you updated on all of them. But at this point, it's going to be the City of Port Alberni, Alberni Clackwood Regional District, and what's that guy, Bentley, what's his name? Yeah, something with him, and then with the FM. There was something here from BC First Nations. I kind of bypassed it unless somebody sees it as important. We'll deal with it. The Trans Mountain expansion. Just so you all know that we've been following Rob's advice on that. Leave that up to the monarchs because at some point we may have needed provincial support on the LNG. And potential that is, we'll leave it up, no comment. And in regard to, there was a letter received from Canada regarding, from John Clare, Acting Director General, regarding cannabis. And it's just saying how we can do this. So what I want to do is Bill Ginger, during the campaign, spoke to this specifically. And then I think even at a couple other meetings, he's spoken to this issue. So Bill Ginger's, I'd like you to contact him, Trevor, and then refer to an economic opportunity or however.
Just in addition to that, there is more than Bill Ginger that spoke to that, so it might be an idea to contact the other citizens as well.
Yeah.
So, I can speak to that. We've had 3 companies over the last term approach OAIC in regards to cannabis, whether it's recreational or medicinal. What we'll do through the through the EDA, when we go through looking at the economic development plan, we'll include cannabis on that. And then the approach has been so far is with the companies that have approached us was we weren't comfortable at this time. But now with last year's legalization and changes, I think it's a better time now to start looking at it. So I think a lot of it actually is including the citizens and a lot of information sharing with them. So there's a lot of research and development being currently done.
And then there was a letter from Inspire. It was addressed to myself. It was in regard to the work that they do, getting funding for students. But what stood out of my mind, or came out, what I thought was important to look at, and it's something quite a few of us have raised. A lot of our children end up leaving home to go to school. What is it, junior high or grade 8, grade 9? And again, the reason we know that school district 70 doesn't have another teacher there, it's the numbers and the dollars. So I'd like to refer this to the Citizen Development Committee, refer the letter to your portfolio, Connie, and add the school issue at home, okay?
And there was this, KOL, one.
Yeah,
You go by that one?
yeah, I'm kidding. So I don't feel you can nudge me. That was the same. And I think that's the last one. Oh, save the date. Being invited to speak at the 6th Annual Forestry Sector Breakfast. Actually, I've been invited. And I thought we should prepare for that and just, it'll give us the exposure we need in forestry at the provincial level. And I think, I'd like to work with Elizabeth to strategize what kind of presentation we want to make. That'll be, so just so you know, Paul, we'll need resources to do that. Okay?
What's the date on that, Rob?
Oh, sorry. Friday, September 27th, 7 a.m. at the Terminal City Club, 837 West Hastings, and Rachel's pulled off a miracle to get me from NPC to Vancouver, anyway, she pulled off a miracle. I think it's 4 or 5 different meetings in those 3 days. And there's the Westpac Tilbury Marine Jetty Project Environmental Assessment. I've referred that to Christine Grumman. Oh, there's a lot of correspondence. And then we'll deal with this one. We have one from Parks Canada to attend a meeting on, 2-day meeting on August 27th, 28th. I'm on holiday, so does anyone want to go? Ed? Okay.
August 28th and 29th, yeah, in Vancouver Island University.
Okay. And I think there has been an official opposition meeting opportunity. Trevor, John, and Elizabeth, maybe you get together to see if it's worth attending any one of those. Okay.
Where was it?
We got a letter from the official opposition, and they're creating opportunities for us to meet with them.
No, okay.
Okay.
It's all the same, they're just a different country.
I think I ended with your file, but I ended with double letters here. Was that it then? Yeah, you ended up with mine. Okay, that's it for the correspondence.
Okay.
And I've talked to Kathy about correspondence. I've always wanted us to have a paper trail on correspondence. You never know that one day we may need that if for some reason we need it for some activity we're undertaking. And the most obvious place that I've known where we've needed correspondence is if we end up in court about something. And that's usually where it's needed. So having a really good paper trail, the ability to find letters that have been sent, within the last 2 years are critical. And I participate in legal cases where we have looked for and required correspondence for court cases that we've been involved in. Okay, on to the next agenda item, which is there anything there that anyone wants to speak specifically to the correspondence issue? Okay.
Did we talk about the DFO?
Hmm?
The DFO? All the fisheries motions, your chief and council, talking about the, framework for the aquaculture. framework for aquaculture.
Oh, yeah, I referred that to Christine also. Yeah.
Except because of your portfolio.
So I think, moving on to the next item, financials, Paul, however you wanna do this, I don't know, you wanna just jump to the June or do it like this?
Yeah, I was thinking of just jumping to the June. I can answer any questions on any of the months.
Yeah.
So June is the end of our first quarter of the current fiscal year. So yeah, about 1/4 of the way through the year. Starting on the balance sheet, our financial position remains quite strong, with over 17 million in current assets. And our investments increased from 32 million to 40 million over the previous year, largely due to the investment in TFL 44, which is in the other investments line there. Current liabilities are similar to last year, down about 100,000 from just over 2 million to just over 1.9 million. Long-term liabilities increased by about 5.5 million. So that's primarily from 6 million for TFL 44, 500,000 for the crab license, and then minus about 1 million for payments made on those and other long-term debts. So the accumulated surplus by the end of June is 67 million, and income year-to-date 2.5 million. So the audit is still being completed and the adjusting journal entries to be entered, so that will affect these numbers, and we expect the accumulated surplus to increase based on the discussions with the auditors and the adjusting journal entries we've talked about so far. So that's the balance sheet. Next page is the income statement. So first quarter revenues totaled $6.2 million. The way our funds from Canada work in treaty is that a lot of it comes in April, so it's very front-loaded, which works great for us. So we can implement our budget kind of right away. We don't have to have any major cash flow concerns. The final time-limited treaty payment, treaty capital payment of 2.6 million was made in April, and that's the last one. And that's paid 100% on April 1st. And then our regular funding through the FFA, about approximately 80% is paid April 1st, and then a smaller amount at the beginning of each month for the next 9 months. So that's the 1.3 million line. Other major revenue year-to-date is 1.3 million in stumpage from the forestry LP. And not a major one, but I think it's important to point out our resource revenue sharing through treaty. This year it's 50% paid by the province, 50% paid by Canada. Totaled about 330,000 this year, 165,000 from each government. And the formula that calculates what we get each year from resource revenue sharing has a floor and a ceiling, and every single year since the beginning of the treaty, the calculation has always come up under the floor, so we've always been paid the minimum. It's always been topped up to the floor. This is the first year that it's ever been above that, so we were expecting about 112,000 from each government, but this is the first year it's been above that, and it's 165,000 each. So that's the main points in the revenue, totaling 6.2 million. Yeah.
Paul, just to make sure, the resource revenue sharing is
Yes, yeah, you can actually go on the province's, I forget exactly what it's called, but like the harvest billing database.
Yeah, yeah.
And calculate it out from there. It takes it from 2 regions, a percentage from each.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, from the level of activity, basically in our area. So expenses so far year to date of 3.1 million. Everything mainly within budget except for a few items. Consulting, which is quite variable, and was higher in the first 3 months of the year, which is expected usually around year end, beginning of the year, it's higher, and then in the summer months, it goes down a bit. So we're confident that that'll be in line for the annual budget. The DIA line, showing over by 22,000, that was a one-time annual payment, and it's under the budget for the year, so that'll be in line with the annual budget. Education, slightly over, which is expected with events around school year ends within the first quarter. Mono allocation a bit higher than expected because our budget for the year matches exactly what we'll pay. It's just that our budget splits it up equally by month, and they actually bill a little bit. Each quarter is a little bit different. First quarter's higher, second quarter's lower. Patient travel is always over because that's reimbursed on a separate line item. Property tax is a bit over because those are always due early June, so we get those paid up in the first quarter. So that'll be in line by the end of the year, and those were the major variances on the expense side. And there are some accounts where there's quite a bit of room left, so the year-to-date expenses of 3.1 million are against the year-to-date budget of 4.3 million. So we are 1.1 million under budget so far. And of course, some of those with a lot of room left are based on the level of activity and variance. So that's the income statement and balance sheet. The next page is the capital budget. So this is just a quick glance to see where the activity is in our major infrastructure projects. And this is kind of continuing from the last year that the subdivision is the major project right now. So we see that's where most of the spending in the capital budget is. And then there's also, salary and benefits report, department summary, and travel expenses report. I won't go through all those in detail, but if there's any questions on them, I can answer them today or at any time. Just reiterate that anytime council wants to come and talk to me about the budget, my door is always open. Just want to drop in and dive into the detail on any of these or just ask any general questions. And that's a summary of the quarter to date so far.
Move acceptance.
So moved.
Move second and on. Discussion. Just a comment, Paul. I certainly appreciate where we're at, and from my perspective now, I even feel better seeing that we've now signed the what do you call it? The
Fiscal financing agreement.
So it's really important for executive council to know that we're now even in a better financial position than we were, because I know you were very, very cautious about how you drafted that, and even though I was cringing, I was glad we done that, because now we got a good outcome. So, and to Connie, you and your finance committee, certainly all the work that you guys have been doing, and it's really good to see where we're at. And then secondly, I'm always glad that, you know, when we made that decision that we wanted to have $30 million in the bank, you know, I mean, we've exceeded that a long time ago, but just want to remind this council, I remember when Tom Happynick made that suggestion, I think we were in Victoria, he made the suggestion that we should try to have $30 million in the bank, and I told him, I said, what are you smoking, Tom? But then, you know, now it's here, it's a reality. So, I really thank Tom for having initiative to set a goal, and then to have a team that's exceeded that goal, is something to be proud of.
Sure.
Okay, the next item on the agenda then, our council reports, decision, you had all,
Robert,
yeah.
we actually have it says the draft annual finances, and then we have the approval of contracts
Oh, sorry,
for 6.
for 6D. Oh, yeah. Okay, so we need to do, oh, I don't have draft annual plan. Decision fine.
We have 6 feet. Paul will.
So, yeah, these are basically the draft, annual statements. I believe, the prior government did have a look at these, but it's good to, briefly go over them again. So this is kind of roughly where we were at March 31st, 2019. The only changes to these will be adjustments made by the auditors, which we've been working on and will be at the next meeting. So the major changes will be just some changes, moving expenses to the capital assets, and doing our annual depreciation entry. And we've been in discussion about some accounting procedures around the miners trust, kind of whether it's correct to record the entire liability currently. So we're discussing that, and kind of just some other accounting policy things to make sure we're in line with the latest public accounting standards, public sector accounting standards. But yeah, so the March 31st statements aren't too different than the June ending. We went through a strong cash position, liabilities roughly the same, accumulated surplus a bit lower based on the net income we have from the first quarter this year. And then the income statement shows roughly our income last year was just over 20 million and our expenses were just under 17 million. And that's pretty much the draft annuals. And yeah, when we have the auditors at the next meeting, we'll go through the year in more detail.
What's the decision we,
It's just a motion to receive.
oh, okay. So moved by Casey, second by Trevor. Discussion. Really none, motion carried. 6C is this following.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this is a process that we started last year. So in the interest of good governance and transparency, the administration reports monthly on proposed contracts. Part of our financial administrative law requires council approved contracts over a certain threshold, currently 25,000. So in order to ensure that the administrative process flows and we can get contractors when we need them, we seek pre-approvals based on our knowledge of upcoming activities in certain projects. So these pre-approvals are just pre-approval for the contracts. They're still subject to the conditions that the contracts be chosen in accordance with our purchasing policy, so those steps still take place. And the amounts to be spent under the contract is no more than the pre-approved limit. The pre-approved limit doesn't mean we have to use all of it, and often we don't. It's just kind of the high cap. And each contract has detail on the project, brief amount of the activities, the term, the maximum amount it can be, and the budget, which accounts it comes from, and how much budget is left. So for this meeting, we're seeking approval on 9 pre-approved contracts. I believe all these projects are kind of known quantities. There's nothing really new here. The hydro projects for geotechnical review of design revisions. We still have quite a bit of money there from the province's funding last year of $500,000. We also just recently received further funding of $500,000 from a grant application to the BCIEI, I believe it was. So that project is very well funded, and we'll probably see some more contracts coming through as work ramps up there. The social services project is looking for a contract related to establishing the baseline and framework for monitoring effectiveness of the implementation of recommendations. So basically like a reporting structure and a structure so we can judge the effectiveness, and that money will be coming from the Vancouver Foundation grant that was secured last year for a total of $300,000. There's a contract for FFA negotiations and the fiscal policy table. So now that the version 1 of the FFA is signed, we'll be getting into version 2 to tackle the next buckets on the list. Just a reminder, this current FFA, most of the increase is from the governance bucket, which was what most of the detailed work went into. And it looks like the next version of the FFA will be the biggest kind of bucket being tackled will be the infrastructure budget. And then some minor contracts under the threshold, but still just reported for information. Hotway Council support to help develop their governance and as related to the social services project. Admin support contract for the social services project. A contract for TFL 44 negotiation. So that project's still in kind of research and development phase, with it's anticipated moving into the negotiations in September. 2 more for the Child and Family Wellness Program, weekend coverage assistance to decrease overtime paid to current staff members and to curb against staff burnout. And in addition to the Social Service Implementation Task Force member, so this would be adding a citizen to the Social Services Implementation Task Force. And then finally, Governance Advisory to work with executive council to identify governance-related needs such as implementation strategies to fulfill mandates. So those are all the contracts we're seeking pre-approval on.
Okay. So, moved by Connie, seconded by Trevor. Discussion?
Some of these are under 25 grand, you're just putting them on because they're there?
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, just for a one-stop shop so council can have information on what projects we're seeking contracts for.
Meaning they don't really need to come here.
No.
Yeah.
It's nice.
Just a couple questions, Paul,
Mhm.
related to the social service project negotiations with the province. What's the status?
I'm not fully up to date on that. I can get information on that unless Coral or Shannon has information.
That question, please, Robert?
Pardon?
Okay, I didn't quite hear you, sorry.
What's the status of the social service project negotiations with the province?
That I'm not sure. I can find out for you though.
Fine.
Before Kathy went on holiday, we spoke about this, and on her return, next week, her and I are sitting down to negotiate.
The reason I ask is I was thinking of raising it with Scott this afternoon, but if I don't have certain information, maybe we should see how we want to take that out, or if we want to plan anything with that. I mean, I think it's critical. I do know we got a 2-year commitment, right? And at 400,000 per year?
Yeah.
Yeah, along with 100,000 for negotiation.
I believe it's 400,000 total. The first year it was a 100 plus 300,000 amount, but I can double check that.
Well, let me understand, it's not 400,000 per year that they're.
It is,
It is, okay.
but yeah, I'm not sure if there's an additional 100,000 on top of that, or if that's included in the 400,000.
And then in regards to the fiscal finance agreement negotiations, I'm glad that you pointed out that there's another version coming up, and that we can actually expect some positive outcomes there.
Mhm.
And I'm really glad, Paul, that our team is playing a very positive role at that table. I think it's important for us to know that our team is playing a very positive role in contributing to actually the outcome. I'm glad that's come up. Thank you.
Yeah.
And that was in relation to infrastructure that you were saying? To the FFA?
Yes, I believe that's going to be the primary kind of bucket that's looked at the next one. We've had the engineering firm Wedler in to do a base study for each of the Monwealth nations. So they've completed that, and they've met with our director of infrastructure to kind of discuss it. So it looks like the infrastructure portion will basically be 2 sections. One, an annual replacement reserve. So what is kind of a model community, and what do you need annually to maintain the infrastructure on that community? So that's one section, and then the other section will be, well, like what's the current gap to get to that model community? And then that'll kind of be a big portion. So there's, one section, close the gap, and then the second part, maintain.
Yeah.
And part of that maintain needs to be putting money aside every year to eventually pay for a big spend to replace after 20 years or whatever. So, local governments have come together on something called asset management planning, and that's something where we may be able to access some good information. This is more about accessing funding year over year to do it. But once we get that funding, we should be able to access a good policy framework to really manage it well.
Okay.
Is there any kind of time frame that's kind of going along with it? Anybody know about that in terms of when that starts? And when it will-
Yeah, it's impossible to say right now. We really tried to get version 1 locked in and got it in just under the wire because of the upcoming election, and it's the elections, federal elections, just is the main wild card there. Yeah.
So I think the direction from here, Trevor, can be let's keep that on the radar in terms of what we gotta do with the federal relations.
Yeah.
Yeah, when we received the report on that, I think it was the last council meeting, I think I was pushing, for us to have a look at our internal political strategy, if, there may be adjusting there to do that, and what the next steps would be for that.
Yeah, Tom,
Yeah,
what did you have up?
the planning that we should do is just contingency planning for a liberal minority, conservative minority, or conservative majority. Those are the three changes. If nothing changes beyond those three, then we don't need to change what we do. I think.
Maybe we should start being brave and who we support.
We do
I
need
know
to-
First Nations are always, they're always leery to do that because they're so traditional.
I got a text to my work phone the other day from the Conservative government. Did you get that too? Counting on, can we count on your vote?
Yes. I definitely, no, just kidding.
I'll send you the selfie immediately.
No, so it's really hard to get rid of that orange shirt when you're at the booth. It just seems to go orange. Okay, reports, who wants to start? June council report. I think, all that's needed is, decision that we received, correct?
So moved.
So moved by John, seconded by Gleason. Discussion? Oh, Han?
I have a couple questions on the reports.
Mm-hmm.
So, in your report, Robert, I was just wondering, under number 6, it says ensuring adherence to and enforcement of the Constitution, Hewlett legislation, and Hewlett policies.
Mhm.
And that I will work closely with the acting executive director and Megan to ensure adherence to enforcement of the Constitution, legislation, and policies. A reminder that by motion, the People's Assembly requested we post executive council salaries and benefits. Executive council needs to review and consider further. So it looks like there's something coming out of there. We need to make a decision on that.
Yeah.
But also in adhering that the Constitution and legislation and policies are held up. I think it's important, and you probably already have thoughts around how you're doing that, is how we show it to the citizens.
Yeah.
That we're following it as leaders, that we're following the legislation, the Constitution, and the policies. Because then it's, when we're calling on something, then it's, well, we're following it, the same rules apply to all of us.
Yeah.
And anybody that is affiliated with the nation has taken the oath.
Yeah.
And so that just stood out for me, is to ensure that we show that we're doing that. And then the other question I had was only because of yesterday's meeting under 7 about the businesses. And so increasing the return from our businesses, I thought it was a really good meeting last night to hear from the board. And we know where our moneymaker is. And the very small part of that equation is our businesses in Banfield. And but that seems to be where we're most showcased. Nobody really knows about what's happening over here and everything else that we're doing. But that's where our, people come to the community, and these are Kuwait businesses. And so I'm just wondering, their reports, Trevor, they're always really good, but from visually looking in, it's not so great. And so anyway, that was my thoughts from last night's meeting, is there's lots of great stuff that they reported, but it always just seems to, the other stuff gets shoved over here with, you know, we have not enough employees, or we have employee problems, or, you know, stuff like that, which, yeah, any business has that. So what are we doing to correct that so we don't have that? Because those businesses are the face of the way it. So,
I mentioned last night, in council in July, I had a motion put forward in regards to an evaluation of our governance. I'm developing a motion for the HFNDC board. We'll be doing the same thing with the group of businesses in regards to just taking the same approach that we're doing with the evaluation with the governance. So kind of just recognizing it, yesterday was kind of just like a very high level, you know, showcasing, but also recognizing there is challenges, and that's what I actually mentioned last night, but we do have challenges in front of us. But I think we're getting to places now where we're in a position to be better fitted to address those issues.
right,
So, within the mandate letters too, Robert has, and there in regards to some of the mandates I need to fill, kind of address those issues too. So come middle of August, there'll be a briefing note to the HFNDC board on evaluation that I'm aiming to will have done by October.
right, okay, that's great, because, I mean, any business is going to have challenges. And I don't think, as a board coming to meet with us, like, they want good communication. So share, like, these are our struggles, you know, this is what we're faced with, like, put it all out there, so it's not just everything is wonderful, but we're maxed out. Oh, yeah, like, and so it sounds like with your evaluation, then that will come out.
Kind of the strategy is going to be, the evaluation is not to necessarily point fingers at anybody, it's how can we just, kind of what we talked about last night, be more efficient at what we're doing.
Well, yeah,
So one she did bring up is the lease for the campground. So that is one that we aim to do in regards to addressing just streamlining things. I've had, I guess for my report, I've had numerous meetings now from Robert, Station, to Patrick, Angela, Cynthia, Jim, kind of just on the active side in regards to just getting feedback, working up to middle of August so that we can start to be prepared to come legislature, have an economic development plan where in the next 4 years, we're gonna start banging things off and getting to those places by the end of the term that we're a well-oiled machine. So I think we definitely have as I told them, the ingredients there.
yeah,
So we did talk about alignment and communication, which I think is the most
Yeah.
key thing. But training and employment, you know, there's definitely some issues there, but those labor force issues are right across Canada. And I think it's just gonna take us kind of working together to get past them.
yeah. No, I thought it was really, really good, just, you know, big time we flush things out.
But I'm working with council support right now, we'll be sending out an email to set up meetings with all the portfolio holders, with my 2 portfolios. So just
Okay.
with academics and communications.
Yeah,
So just to help, because some of the things that we have issues with at the group of businesses are not necessarily business driven, but community needs. I think it's all of us play a part in that. I stayed there this last weekend and had some issues come up where I'll be chatting with the executive director and the CEO.
Can you talk to the owner?
Okay.
Talk to the
So,
owner?
I think in the issue you're raising, Connie, at the next meeting, we'll have the people's motions on the agenda again, because I know we didn't finish them, correct? There was still some that we had to deal with, and we couldn't deal with them prior to the election. We kind of went on the shelf, so put that back on the agenda for the first September meeting. And then I just want to make a comment about, in regard to related to promoting and maintaining a sound and weight economy. And one of the ways we were thought of helping to promote our economy is giving it exactly what you're talking about, give it a good face. And we said, let's build this big totem pole. Well, there's a big totem pole sitting behind the carver's yard, needs to be put up. But my understanding is, there's I guess you call it a jurisdictional, dispute, who should be doing the work, putting it up. I'm seeing HEB is saying, it's HFN, it's your pole, you should put it up. And is that the issue, or why is it having to be put up? I know they started digging the hole.
I thought it was the location and that and then it was cracked, and so now it was better air because it was so large that they had to find better supporting for it in order to be able to move it.
Well, I don't know.
Well, that was what I was told from Stephen, who was part of the putting it up.
Fine.
Could we ask the acting ED to follow up and
Yeah.
see how we can get that done?
See if we can get it put up by the Labor Day weekend. I mean, you can always say I couldn't do it, but you know.
Yeah, I
I'm a
wasn't-
target person.
I need to get up to speed on the latest with this project. Yeah, another counselor, actually, we had this exact conversation just the other day, so I've got that on my list to look into with the goal of Labor Day.
Down to the last 22 hours or something.
Yeah, no, we had it 48 hours.
I'm gonna help Paul out here a little bit. Could we maybe look at delegating, maybe a few of us on council to work together to bring things like that forward, or kind of bring projects like that forward, because I think often things like that will get lost in the cracks. Because people are like, just as you said, people are like, well, is that HFN or HGB? We're just portfolio holders gonna work together to make it happen. Because what I would want to do, like what I'd say from the ed portfolio side is, I'd love to be very strategic when you put the poll up. Because what I'm gonna
Yeah,
do,
begin
I'm gonna
first.
ask Heather to get communications involved, that we want people there. So we have a collaborative group with ITBC, things like that are very significant and offer opportunity just to showcase what we're trying to do at home and with our businesses.
Well, that would all be part of it. You might find when you get on it that it might be best to put it up at a different time, right? Or there might be additional work that George needs to do so that we gotta deal with the crack in the hole. So anyway, get it to the point where we can get the pole up. Christian and, no, go ahead.
Okay, thanks. The other point I wanna, and I made the point last night, and I think one of the board members made the point to, might have been Karen, that the session we had last night was really beneficial. You know, to get an update and to get, up to speed of what's going on. But some of the stuff I heard in the meeting were things I've heard before too. And we need to get away from that kind of repetitive language, because, sitting with one of our council members after that, when it's something that happened in the beginning of the last election too. All those good words of working together. We really need to make an effort on keeping a tab on that, keeping a close eye on that, from recognizing that it's an economic arm of our government, and our chief counselor is always stressing the point that, he's under the microscope too, to ensure that we have a sound economy. And so I would like to see us, build into our communications plan that however we achieve it, but we need to do, the session we had last time, we need to do that more often, right? To make sure that we make those connections and those bridges with the appropriate staff that we have to work together. You talked about doing employment and training, and so we need to really, hit targets on that employment training. You know, it always seems to be like a moving thing, it's their responsibility, it's this responsibility, of this side of the academic, so to come up with a more of a strategic approach to that, you know, I see those gatherings being very beneficial to achieve those check marks, you know, that lean on our strategic goals as a nation, because the positive generation from economic development is going to help our nation become more stronger, more healthy, more educated. So we need to ensure that we, you know, find where those bridges are and make those connections to work together in a really positive way. So I just wanted to make that point again here.
Just after our conversation on Tuesday in regards to putting up a poll by Labor Day, so that last year hung up the phone and then went to Paul's office.
You're the one, eh?
And then, but I think it's an administration thing, and I think that it's been voiced, and it just needs to be put up. And we need to figure out, you know, if it needs to be banded together, then it needs to be banded together. We need to know a cost. We need to get concrete in the ground for the foundation for it. You know, it just needs to happen. We have another pole that's sitting in the carving shed that's supposed to go at the cemetery. We have a pipeline that's in the ground for our sewage. You know, we need to finish some things. You know, that's exactly what Paul said. You know, we have things that need to be done, and they're just sitting there. So I think that you know, we've voiced it in the past. You know, we said it again on Tuesday. It's a conversation that we had, and you know, I think with Paul's 22 hours left, and being able to figure out what needs to be done. You know, and you know, if we need to find money from somewhere, or if we need to go halfers with the group of businesses, or you know, we need to make it happen, and you know, celebrate this project that's sitting in the backyard.
Okay.
So last night we talked about the businesses making profits, but we never talked about projects like this. And so again, this is where it falls through practice. Because if we want to do it, then we should do it on government property. I'm just kind of pointing out in regards to some of the things that I face holding the portfolio. Is like, if we want to do something with a group of businesses, we want to put it up on there, then let's put the motion forward in regards to do that. Otherwise, we'll continue to do this, because if we're paying for it, then it's going to go somewhere on our properties. Technically, it is, and so that's what I mean. Let's put the motion forward so that I can put it through the whole thing before we put it through our process, which can be lengthy. And that's what I'm saying, put it into our wheelhouse and let us push it forward.
See, when I looked at the BOLA as part of ACB's marketing strategy, they could use that. You know, that was one of the reasons for let's do it.
So, I'm going to speak to that thing too. So, you notice a lot of the signage right now, you know, there hasn't really been too much to the branding piece. And I'm being very, very strategic with that. When we bought those properties, we just wanted them to run it. Have a motel, a pub, a restaurant, a general store, run it, get it to a place where you can have a standard. But when it comes to once we start marketing and pushing a brand and putting things up, we need to be very purposeful with that. We need to make sure that we take a very first good step. Otherwise, if we don't have a first good step and we don't have a good impression when we start doing things, like if there's no cohesiveness to what we're trying to do to market what we are as a way of businesses, we're not going to do well. So I'm just going by what my mandates are and then the guidelines and what I'm responsible for.
Okay. Anyway, we know where we want to go with that. Which falls right into the next section, today, part 7B is portfolio rationale.
Are we finished, Councilor report?
Yes,
Are we?
We just need to, oh no, we did, sorry.
yeah, I thought we approved, and then we got into discussion.
Oh, okay, so I just have a question then. We don't have hot weather report on the agenda, but we have it in the kit. Because we've got one from Derek and we've got one from the hot weather council.
added that just as in the executive council, because there's, I didn't know if, because we don't really look at Hotway Council, the actual report itself, so I thought maybe adding it to the council report, so people can see what Derek does, because he sits on council as well.
Okay, I was just curious because we've always had it separate, so that's fine. if
Yeah.
That's changed. So I just have a question in regards to it
Yeah.
then, and maybe Derek, you can, just because it's in the kit,
Yeah,
Andy's letter,
yeah.
did you have any?
There was a concern about vehicle use in general, in terms of seeing vehicles at home. But I think we rationalized that with the discussions that we had at previous council meetings, in terms of just vehicles in general across the board, where he sees doesn't want more information around why they're being used and why they're out.
Right, so that was discussed at Hotway.
Yeah.
So, anyway, in regard to portfolio rationale, some of the reasons I want really keep an eye on portfolios is it helps with the political strategy, our political strategy of how we're going to move things, either at the federal level, provincial level, or wherever it may be. So I want to keep a really close tab with everyone, what we're doing. And one of the things I want to avoid is a last minute preparation like we're end up doing today. We're meeting Scott Fraser and we're doing a last minute prep for that. We have some meetings coming up. I want to be prepared well in advance. And I want to say it's nobody's fault. It was just that I asked for a meeting and here's a meeting date, and then we only had a week's notice or something. So it was hard to be prepared for that. So in regard to Scott Fraser, it's no one's fault. But I think what we can look at is that we should always have our, whatever communication we want to be prepared and just be able to pull it out. Like say, Heather, you got it all, we just pull it out, here it is, you can take for that meeting. With modifications when we, meet with Elizabeth. So that's my rationale for really keeping an eye on portfolios. And in order for us to develop a really good political strategy, we need to be aware of the issues in a very timely manner. So I'm urging all of you to have issues that need external attention. Please get it to us so that we can plot our strategy and always have a good strategy moving forward. Because the worst thing is to go to some meeting you're invited to and be totally unprepared, and all you will get, thank you for meeting us, and that'll be it. I'm the type of leader that I want to go to a meeting, we have it set out so that action can be taken on why we're meeting with them, and that we have the ability to follow up. So I'm going to be a little bit more disciplined in this term. Some of you maybe get irritated or maybe even mad at me, but I don't care anymore, because we have to do these things in order to be effective. And so that's why I'm pushing it, and that's why we have Elizabeth helping us with political advice on what are the kind of things that we need to bring when we go to these meetings. And I can tell you, and I think Elizabeth can verify this, that when you meet with government, for example, you don't want a 3-4 page story. You want to be a 1 or 2 page short summary that minister or that premier or prime minister can look at and make a decision, or at least to say, I'm going to follow up on it. And I've been told by so many different people, when you bring this long document and it's full of information, I'm going to say thank you. I'll read it sometime, and then sometime may never come, right? And I think we've all had experience in that. Is what kind of document do we want to present, briefing note or whatever we call it, that we want to present. And I want us to really focus on that. And I want each of you to have some kind of provincial and federal success in each of your portfolios. Because the best thing for a portfolio holder is that portfolio holder gets their work done. Don't depend on the chief counselor or the hereditary chief or the tie chief to deal with it. I'm trying to develop a new leadership membership is that you have duties and responsibilities. See if you can stick Canada through. All you have to do now is work with Trevor. Trevor's got the portfolio holder for external affairs. If there's something that you want federally or provincially, sit down with Trevor. Trevor will bring in Elizabeth. Here's how we're gonna handle it moving forward. Pretty simple, eh? Do you all agree? Yeah. Yeah, okay, great. Elizabeth, that'll work right into you.
Well, I was just gonna say, one of the other things that I can do for all of you is if I know enough in advance of a meeting, not only can I help you with what you're gonna present at the meeting, but I could talk to the public servants behind the scenes and find out what they're saying to the minister, so that we have more information, and that's, but if I don't get enough lead time, I often can't track those people down and get it, so the sooner you let me know, the sooner I can give you more information that might be really helpful in the meetings.
Trevor?
So I met with Kathy 2 weeks ago, just on that very thing, so I've had meetings with, Chris and Kevin, and then also with Elizabeth in regards to the province, so my goal right now with the external communications is to, one, have a one-on-one meeting, so there's Secani treating, citizenship, social service project. So if things are going good, I still wanna know, because then when we're, in places, whether it's conference, dinners, meetings, and we're having that, those are really helpful to have those good stories and chatting. But really the focus is to have one-on-one meetings with all the council members to get what they're doing, look at the priorities that we've had in the past year and then bring those forward. And kind of just what you said, when there's a meeting that comes up, my aim is not so much maybe the legwork that I do, but actually being prepared to support council members. Because my idea is, if it's social service or treaty implementation, that would almost be maybe a team approach. I feel like with UBCM is a really good example. There's meetings that each individuals have, and I'm really there more as support in regards to your portfolios and just external. So we're currently working on that now. I'm aiming to have that in by end of August and being prepared for UBCM.
Okay.
Can I ask one thing?
Yeah.
Can Paul, once Kathy comes on, can you make sure through procedure or policy that are support? So I'd say it's really important for Veronica, for Nicole, and for Rachel to understand if there's anything, like when Scott Fraser, you might have a conversation with Rachel and say, I have a meeting with Scott, that should kind of automatically signal to her that she should have other conversations with myself, the AD, just to keep us all apprised. Not even expecting you to contact me, but to know that she is a support, needs to
Okay.
know who's involved.
Okay. Good then.
Okay.
Good request to make. Just to follow up, I do have a meeting with Scott Fraser this afternoon at 3, and then we do have the Union of BC Municipalities, and then also now the official opposition request. So do I think, is there any more? Actually, I'll just throw it to you.